Ever get that feeling? Like some part of you is, well, out of time. Almost like you're holding on to memories for a life you never actually lived.
Yeah.
It's a thought, isn't it? Well, today we're taking a deep dive into reincarnation.
Okay.
We're following the case of E.C., a French woman whose story might just make you rethink everything you thought you knew about memory, consciousness, even the echoes of past lives.
That was intriguing.
It really is. And what's so compelling about E.C.'s story is that it's not just some vague feeling of familiarity, you know? This is vivid details. We're talking specific past life experiences.
I see. And you said some of these details can actually be verified.
Exactly. We're talking corroborated by historical records, the real deal. But here's the thing, beyond the verifiable details, it's how these potential past lives are woven into the fabric of E.C.'s everyday life. They shape her interests, even her fears. It's fascinating.
I can see why you chose this for our deep dive. It really raises some interesting questions. One thing that comes to mind is the concept of implicit memory.
Okay, so walk me through this. What does implicit memory have to do with past lives?
Well, imagine this. Your subconscious mind, it's like this vast library. It holds not just this life, right, but potentially all these whispers, these faint traces of lives lived before.
Oh, wow, okay. Like a warehouse full of old books, and we're just seeing a few pages here and there.
Exactly. And sometimes those whispers, they become these implicit memories, subtly shaping your personality, your passions, even those completely unexplainable fears without you even realizing it.
So we could be carrying around all this baggage, so to speak, and not even know it. Wild.
It really is.
So let's rewind a bit, get back to E.C.'s story. Growing up, she was always drawn to, let's say, unconventional things. Not your average girly girl, you know? Horses were her thing, adventure, that sort of vibe.
I see. So a bit of a tomboy.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And then when she was 18, she had this near-death experience, a horse riding accident, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not talking about a fender bender. This wasn't just a fall. It was like this profound, life-altering event. And this event, it seemed to just crack open this door to a flood of memories, memories she never knew she had.
Like a veil lifted.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Suddenly, it's like she's just bombarded with these incredibly vivid, very detailed memories of a past life as a U.S. Marine.
A U.S. Marine.
Yeah, U.S. Marine named John David Smith. Not exactly what you'd expect, right? Especially with her French upbringing.
You're telling me, so this near-death experience, do you think it's possible that it somehow triggered these memories?
It really makes you wonder. I mean, we've heard similar stories before. There's definitely a documented connection between these near-death experiences and a surge in reported paranormal experiences.
Right. Like it somehow makes us more open to the possibility of other realms, other realities existing beyond what we can normally perceive.
Exactly. It's like our perception shifts, becomes more receptive, and, you know, that's precisely what seemed to happen to E.C. She started meditating, and out of nowhere, this name just pops into her head, John David Smith.
And this name, it wasn't just a random name, right?
Nope, not random at all.
Huh.
Remember we talked about those corroborated details? Turns out John David Smith was a real person, a U.S. Marine who died in the Vietnam War.
No way. That's unbelievable. So how did she react to that? I mean, finding out this name she'd been fixated on was actually a real person.
Well, she was definitely more than a little curious. E.C. decides to explore these memories further, and she decides to try regression therapy. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Isn't it supposed to be like accessing a hidden room in your mind? A room filled with memories you never knew you had.
That's a great way to describe it. It's like using hypnosis to unlock those forgotten experiences, those memories that are buried deep within our subconscious.
Fascinating. So what happened during these therapy sessions? What did she experience?
Well, during one session, she has this incredibly real, vivid experience. It's like she becomes John David Smith. She describes lying on a cot, writing a letter home. She could hear the sounds of helicopters, other soldiers around her. E.C. could even feel the weight of his fatigues, smelled the damp canvas of the tent. That's how real it was for her.
Wow. That's incredibly vivid. But it gets even more specific than that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned earlier about her recalling even more detailed memories.
You're right. It does get much more specific. And it's this next memory that really sends chills down my spine.
Okay, I'm listening.
So in another session, she's walking with Smith's platoon in Vietnam. She can feel the heavy rain, the mud, and then suddenly, bam, she's hit. E.C. feels the searing pain in her left side as she collapses. Just like that.
And that pain, did she say anything else about it?
Yeah.
Did it feel real to her?
It gets even more intriguing. You see, EC has always suffered from this chronic pain, and guess where?
Her left side.
You got it. It's an uncanny parallel, isn't it? It makes you think of phantom limb syndrome.
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? Could the emotional, or in this case, maybe even the physical trauma from a past life, could it actually manifest in the present like that?
Exactly. It really challenges our understanding of how our past experiences, even those from potential past lives, might be impacting our physical and emotional well-being in this life. What if our bodies are holding on to more than we realize?
It's a fascinating and unsettling thought.
It really is. But hold on, there's even more to this story. It's not just these feelings or vague sensations. EC starts recalling specific details about John David Smith's life that you wouldn't believe. We're talking his childhood home, a scar he had from a childhood injury, even the heart-wrenching conversation he had with his parents when he told them he was joining the Marines. She remembers it all in vivid detail.
Wow. So it wasn't just these random details. It was specific events, specific memories that she could connect to his life.
You got it. But here's where it gets even wilder. After these sessions, EC's life takes this noticeable turn. Almost overnight, she becomes so drawn to American culture, specifically 1950s and 60s American culture.
That's quite a shift, especially considering her French background.
It really is. And I'm not just talking a general interest. We're talking 1950s, 60s music on repeat. Craving peanut butter and white bread sandwiches. I mean, very specific.
That is specific. So specific, in fact, that it's hard to imagine it being a coincidence.
And that's not even the half of it. Get this, she starts spontaneously swearing in English.
No way. Hold on. So are we talking about xenoglossy now? The idea of speaking or understanding a language you've never learned?
That's exactly what it sounds like, right? And while it's definitely a controversial topic, there are actually documented cases that suggest it might be more than just a fringe theory.
It's certainly compelling. It makes you wonder just how much of our subconscious minds we're not tapping into, how much influence those hidden depths might have on our waking lives.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? Have you ever felt this unexplainable draw to a certain culture, a certain time period, even a specific language? Could it be, just maybe, a whisper from a past life? Something calling to you from deep within?
Who knows? But it's a question worth pondering.
It really is. And speaking of whispers from the past, John David Smith wasn't the only past life EC experienced. Get ready for this, because this next one takes us all the way to Russia during the time of Catherine the Great.
Oh, wow. All right, I'm ready. Let's hear it.
Buckle up, because this one is a wild ride. This time, EC finds herself in the boots of a Don Cossack, part of the Russian Imperial Guard, no less. Talk about a change of scenery.
Wow. From U.S. Marine to Russian Cossack, that is quite a jump. So, what was this past life like for her? How did it feel different?
Well, from what I know about the Don Cossacks, they were known for their incredible equestrian skills, fierce independence, and military prowess. I mean, they were a dominant force in Russian history, especially during Catherine the Great's reign. Think about it, vast steppes, thundering hooves, and a life of freedom on horseback. That was the world of the Cossacks.
It's such a stark contrast, right? The mud and rain of Vietnam to the open steppes of Russia. And it's amazing how different EC describes feeling in this lifetime. Gone are those heavy emotions, that sense of trauma. Instead, it's all joy, this deep connection to nature, and of course, an even deeper love for horses.
That makes sense, considering their lifestyle. So she basically went from a traumatic experience to a really positive one. Exactly. She even calls it her soul's favorite life.
Wow, her soul's favorite. That's a powerful way to describe it. I've never thought about it like that before. It makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, our souls have these affinities, for certain places, certain ways of life, and those echoes, they just, well, they resonate across lifetimes.
It really is a captivating thought, isn't it? And when we think about EC's lifelong passion for horses, her preferred riding style, her love of horse breeding, it does make you pause and wonder, are these just hobbies? Or could they be reflections of her soul's true calling, echoing through time from this past life?
I mean, I'm sure some people would just say she was riding horses as a kid, and that's how she got into it.
Right, that's the logical explanation. But then, remember how she was convinced one of her own horses might be the reincarnation of her Cossack horse? That's taking it to another level.
She really believed that.
It really seems like it. And that brings up a whole other fascinating concept. We could spend another deep dive unpacking animal reincarnation.
It's definitely a fascinating concept. I mean, the idea that animals could reincarnate, it's a belief found in many cultures, isn't it?
It really is. And it just adds another layer of complexity to this whole idea of a soul's journey, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It definitely does. And I'm thinking, even if Western science hasn't really dug into it too deeply, there are so many stories and even research suggesting maybe it's time we expanded how we think about consciousness and how we're all connected, humans, animals, everything.
Exactly. It's like we talked about earlier with implicit memory. It's possible, right, that even those little quirks we have as kids, those things we just can't explain, whether it's a fear or just being drawn to something, maybe, just maybe, they're whispers from those past life connections.
I like that. Whispers from past life connections. That's a good one. So where do we go from here? Because I have a feeling EC's got more to tell us about her past lives, right?
You know it. We've covered John David Smith, the U.S. Marine, and now the Don Cossack in Russia. But those weren't the only past lives she experienced. It's like her mind was this treasure chest full of these past life memories just waiting to be discovered.
Okay, so what else came up? What other lives did she tap into?
It's almost like she'd get these quick flashes, like snapshots of other lives she'd lived. There was a Viking trader navigating icy seas. Oh, and there was a Native American healer and an Austro-Hungarian orphan.
Wow, that's a lot to process. Each one, a glimpse into this whole other existence in a different time, a different culture, a completely different version of herself. That's heavy stuff.
It is heavy stuff, and it makes you wonder, what if all of these experiences, even if they weren't what we traditionally call real past lives, how do we explain them? What if it's our subconscious just trying to process everything? All those emotions, experiences, maybe even things we've inherited in some way and we don't even realize it?
It's definitely a possibility, isn't it? Our subconscious minds, they're like these vast oceans. And these memories, they're like currents just swirling beneath the surface, sometimes bubbling up in the most unexpected ways.
I love that imagery, the subconscious as a vast ocean full of memories. So I have to ask you, have you ever had anything like that happen? Like a dream, but it felt so real? Or just a sudden, strong feeling about something? What if that was it? What if that was a whisper from a past life, just a fragment of a story, but it's your story and it's waiting to be heard? It really does feel that way, doesn't it? Like we're trying to put a puzzle together, but we've got pieces from like 10 different boxes all mixed up. How do we even know which pieces go together, let alone what the final picture is supposed to be?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a
Right.
question that's fascinated people for centuries. And I don't know if science really has all the answers quite yet. But it does offer some interesting paths we can explore, don't you think?
Okay, so where do we even begin? How does science even start to unravel all of this past lives, implicit memory, the whole shebang?
Well, I think one of the most relevant areas we can look at is the study of memory itself. Think about it. Our memories, they aren't like video recordings, are they? They're not perfectly capturing every detail.
Right, more like those old faded photographs.
Exactly. It's all subjective, fluid, constantly being reshaped and rewritten by new experiences, our beliefs. Even our imaginations can't help but get in there and mix things up.
That's so true. How many times have you compared memories with a friend, and it's like you were both at completely different events?
All the time. It's like we each have our own version of reality playing in our minds.
Right. So now try to imagine trying to recall a memory, not just from years ago, but from centuries ago. A memory that might have even been experienced by a different version of yourself.
Whoa. Mind-blowing. How much of that could even be accurate? I mean, really. How much would time, perception, our own limited understanding of things, how much do you think that would color those memories?
It's almost impossible to say for sure. It really does make you question everything, doesn't it? We tend to place so much faith in our memories, taking them as these completely accurate reflections of the past. But what if they're actually just impressions?
Yeah.
Open to interpretation and vulnerable to all sorts of influences we don't even fully understand.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We may never fully understand the nature of memory.
Yeah.
It's one of those great mysteries, wouldn't you say?
It really is. It makes you think how much of our past is shaping who we are in ways we're totally unaware of.
It's a mind-boggling thought for sure. And, thinking about EC's story, it really does make you think about the limits of what we know.
So how does EC's story fit into all of this? We've got these fascinating scientific concepts about memory and consciousness, but how do we connect that back to her experiences?
Well, whether we choose to see these experiences as genuine past life memories, or maybe just as products of a very active subconscious, either way, EC's story challenges us to stretch our minds. It's like she's saying, hey, what if there's more to this life than meets the eye?
I love that. It reminds me of that feeling when you first realize that the world map you grew up with, the one you thought showed you everything well, you realize it's actually got all these blank spaces on it with "Here be dragons" scrawled across them. Exciting, but also a little scary, right?
Exactly. And isn't that what makes it so exciting? Who wants to live in a world where we already have all the answers, where there's nothing left to discover?
So true. So where do we even go from here? I mean, most of us don't have access to these hidden chambers in our subconscious like EC seems to. What can we take away from all of this?
I think it comes down to a simple but powerful idea. Reincarnation aside, just for a moment, I think EC's story, it's an invitation. It's a call to approach life's big questions with a sense of wonder and curiosity, to never stop asking those what-if questions.
That's a great point, because it's easy to get stuck in our routines, to stop questioning things.
It happens to the best of us. But EC's story reminds us to question our assumptions, to be open to exploring the vast, uncharted territories of the human mind, to be brave enough to say, maybe, just maybe, we're far more complex, far more interconnected than we ever realized.
So beautifully said. It's a great reminder that some of the most fascinating, important journeys we can take are those that lead inward. Really exploring those hidden depths of our own being.
Absolutely. Who knows what we might find there?
And hey, maybe, just maybe, in those quiet moments of introspection, we'll find echoes of other lives, other versions of ourselves waiting to be heard. This has been an incredible deep dive. A huge thank you to you for joining us on this mind-bending journey into past lives and the mysteries of the human experience. Until next time, keep asking those big questions and never stop exploring the uncharted territories of your own mind.